Hello and welcome to HackerRank TV. This is your host Adil Bandukwala. I have a very interesting story for you today. This story is about this one particular Indian company who, after getting accepted into Y Combinator in 2016, has been an unstoppable force for small businesses in India. Their app is a ray of hope for lakhs of entrepreneurs in the country who usually have to navigate a myriad of ungoverned marketplaces and red tapes to sell their products and services. Besides earning numerous accolades, like being named one of the top 50 most innovative companies in the world, this particular company successfully steered clear of the downturn that the pandemic brought upon the world of business last year and more than doubled its valuation in less than 6 months. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about this incredible company called Meesho. And today we're joined by Meesho's co-founder and CTO, Sanjeev Barnwal, whose passion for building reliable and powerful technology has piloted this incredible growth for the company. And we look forward to delving into how he's made this magic happen. But before we get into that, I'd love to give a quick intro to Sanjeev. Under his leadership, Meesho and its tech stack, engineered in-house, has created a seamless shopping experience for users across the country. His priority is to create engaging user experiences, high-scale systems, and cutting-edge data science applications to fuel Bharat's e-commerce dreams. Prior to founding Meesho, Sanjeev has worked as a software engineer with Sony Japan. He contributed to the camera technology for DSLRs and Sony Mobile before venturing into the entrepreneurial journey with Meesho in 2015. His technology prowess has rapidly transformed Meesho from a hyperlocal fashion discovering platform to a $4.9 billion internet commerce business. Sanjeev is an electrical engineering graduate from IIT Delhi. Beyond his entrepreneurial endeavor, Sanjeev is also actively involved in advising founders and investing in young startups across India and Southeast Asia. Sanjeev, super stoked to have you with us. Thank you for joining us and welcome to HackerRank TV.
Thanks, Adil, for the amazing intro. Super excited to be here and share everything that we have learned from our journey with everyone.
Thank you. And we're super excited to host you as well. And with that, let me introduce my other guests for this live stream. Like always, we have with us Hari Shankaran Karunanidhi, co-founder and CTO of HackerRank, the technology hiring platform that is the standard for assessing developer skills for over 3,000 plus companies around the world. HackerRank, like you know, is backed by JMI Equity, Khosla Ventures, and Battery Ventures. And prior to HackerRank, Hari has had technology stints with IBM and Novell in Bangalore. Hari, always grateful for you to join us. And you know, every time I tell stories about how Hari made it possible, like a couple of times he'd had to change flights to the US and he's come. One time he's taken this live stream at 3 a.m. in the night in the Bay Area, which was a conducive time for India. This time around, Hari is surviving on 1 hour of sleep. Last night he had a crazy office work hour, and he continues to make this happen for us. Hari, always grateful.
Wow.
Thanks, Adil. Super excited for the discussion. I'm always thrilled to be here.
And with that, let's welcome a few people who are already tuning in. We are broadcasting live right now on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and LinkedIn. I see a lot of you have already tuned in. So let's say a hello to a few of you. Sauvik, who's tuned in from LinkedIn. Hi there. We have Nei Gapula. We have Aman Gupta, Supriyo, Nilesh, C. Dhiren. We've got Srinath. Seleko, where are you from? That's an interesting name. Hello, geeks. Hello, we're all geeks. We've got Naga. We've got Zedasa, I think your comment came in maybe 2-3 minutes back. I hope you're no longer waiting and you're tuned into this live stream. We've got Zovio. We've got Dhiren, Sagar Babu. There's just so many. I think there are already like 90 or 100 comments that have come in. Manish. So for all of you who've commented in, do tune in where you're tuning in from. Whether you're from India, if in India, which part of the city. A lot of you might be in Bangalore. I think rather than Bangalore, tell us Indiranagar, Sarjapur, Whitefield. Let's try and get geo-specifics and figure out where exactly are you tuning in from. If you're from Bombay, tell us Bandra, tell us Dadar, tell us town or South Bombay if you are an elitist, right? If you're in Delhi NCR, tell us Gurgaon, Noida, Cyber Hub, Cyber City, where. So just drop in those comments and we'll get you all featured. Also, for those of you who have questions for Sanjeev or Hari, drop in those questions as a comment. And as and when you do, I can just go ahead and feature them on screen like this, and then we'll ask those questions, right? So please go ahead and do that, and we'll keep doing that. So crazy amount of comments already coming in. Let's take a few. So we've got Whitefield here, we've got Vaishakapatnam, we've got Andhra Pradesh, we've got Hyderabad, we've got Chennai. I see we've got Kochi, Noida, Bareilly, Pune, Bombay. Wow, we've got Shirdi and Amravati too. And then we've got Bihar. And then we've got Kolkata. It's insane. So if you're from a country that's non-India, do put that in too, because we know a lot of people outside of India also join in, and we'll flash those on screen. And then if you have a question or two, go ahead and say that, and then we'll keep going on, featuring them on screen. So again, very excited. Thank you everyone for joining in. Let's get this party started. So the theme for today is discovering the tech stack fueling India's favorite online shop, Meesho. So let's get started with the first question. Sanjeev, being able to power entrepreneurs' dreams and build a democratized marketplace for them is certainly an incredible feat at first, but it's also a very sizable one. How do you look through and filter small businesses' multiple needs and wants from a platform like yours and identify what really needs to be built? It's a question of prioritization, right? Because people want the moon and the stars. So how does one turn a ton of feedback, user research, and feature requests you receive to actually ship to production? We'd love to get started with that.
No, yeah, I think it's definitely a very hard problem. I think it involves a lot of taking bets on what all problems you need to solve, and you'll end up with hundreds of problems always, right? And just before that, I think just to give you some sense of the scale at which we operate, we currently have upwards of 120 million monthly active users. And we not only have resellers, but also a lot of end customers. In fact, large part of the demand side is for end customers buying it for themselves. But yeah, coming to kind of the feature list and feature requests and how do we prioritize, I think we have done it through certain rituals, and these rituals have evolved over time. But at this point, the way it works is, so the first step in figuring out what to solve is dependent on discovering the right problems, right? And there, that is strongly influenced by our user first culture. And within that, some of the things like, we have this ritual of listen or die, which is essentially people kind of doing user calls, everyone, even engineering at some frequency, doing user calls to talk to not just user but supplier, but on both sides. Like, so doing all the user calls to understand what are the bigger problems, right? And from that, you'll end up with a huge list of problems. Now, next step is you want to understand the gravity of the problem. So you always have limited bandwidth everywhere, not just engineering, product, business. So you want to focus on the right problems and create the most amount of impact you can through that bandwidth. So to kind of estimate the gravity of the problem, we do a lot of data crunching. Meesho has always been a strongly data-driven company. So you kind of figure out problems, validate it through your own data, through maybe behavioral data, looking at a lot of cuts across different user cohorts, looking at different funnels. So once you establish that, okay, these in a particular area, these are the 5 important problems that you want to address for the next 6 months, let's say. Team is encouraged to kind of take challenging problems, right? And it's always a balance. You can always work on very definitive problem statements, which will give you deterministic kind of results, but they'll always be very incremental. And then there is this other side where you kind of pick up really hard 10x problems, which are more probabilistic in terms of the impact that they'll create, because just by the nature, they are very hard. And you need a healthy balance of it, right? So that is where we push the team to kind of figure out, take on challenging problems and spend enough time in figuring out the right solution. Now, once we have nailed the problem, figured out the right solution, we apply this lens of speed over perfection, which is essentially one of our core Meesho mantras as well. In Meesho, we take Meesho mantras, which is values, very seriously. But speed over perfection is essentially how do you achieve 80% of the impact in, let's say, half the time, which means how do you scope your solution. Now, once you have done the right scoping, that is when we kind of get together, figure out, build it quickly. Now you have built it, you have built the solution. The hard part still remains. Are you really solving the problem or not? And that is where we leverage a lot of A/B testing, which is we have invested in A/B experimentation platform almost from the beginning. But we do a lot of A/B testing to kind of conclude which ones work, which ones are not working, and then we decide to scale up, scale down. Now, two things on this. One, all the user interface related changes are even harder because there your listen or die calls or user calls will only give you certain amount of information, but beyond that you'll have to kind of deploy user research teams to kind of figure out whether the solution in terms of UX changes that you are kind of thinking are they really working or not. And second thing is continuous problem discovery ritual, which is you should always be in a continuous problem discovery mode, which is maybe carve out some time, some percentage of every team's bandwidth. Could be, I don't know, maybe 10%, 5%, whatever. And at some frequency, try to keep discovering problems because it's a dynamic marketplace. A lot of things change, user behaviors evolve. You keep going deeper into different pockets of the country. So you just cannot be fixated by the problems that we kind of bring in as part of our 6 monthly planning. So there's a continuous problem discovery, and then we maintain a backlog. And we keep swapping in, swapping out whenever we feel there's something more interesting that needs to be solved.
What I loved about what you said is speedo perfection, and I've never heard anything quite like that. Right? It create 80% of the impact in half the time. I mean, if we all just prioritize in taking life that way, or deploying our careers that way, or giving family time or dedicating that family time that way, or shipping products like you've been doing, it's such an incredible value. So thank you for sharing that with us. I think it's a phenomenal growth.
No, you're right. I think this can be extended to just a way of living, right? This can be applied to everything. And always your
Awesome,
long game
awesome.
is going to take a lot more time. And that is where you prioritize, right?
I think it's like Jim Rohn says, right? Either you run the day or the day runs you. But if you've prioritized and if you have this speedo perfection mantra, I think you can just hack like the day and take charge. So again, incredible insights. Thank you for get started with that.
Yeah.
So awesome. I want to welcome a few more users. So, we've got all kinds of people in Bangalore from Indiranagar, KR Whitefield, Domlur, Kormangla. All of those comments are coming in and I've been featuring them on screen. But we've got a ridiculous amount of international visitors as well. And they're tuning in from kind of everywhere in the country. Let's take a minute to welcome them. So we've got Zenovio, who's coming from, he's originally from Equatorial Guinea, but currently in China. Hey, thanks for making time out there. We've got Rizwan all the way from Russia. Thanks for tuning in from there, Rizwan. We've got Faraz all the way from Karachi, Pakistan. We've got Rishabh from the West Indies. We've got someone who likes to be anonymous, and they're from Wakanda. Then we've got someone from Bangladesh. We've got Pardeep from Brampton, Canada. And then we also have Josephat from Kenya. And then I found a few people from America as well, but I'm kind of lost in the comments because I see there are already more than 180 comments. So I'm finding it a little difficult to feature the right ones. But please do keep putting in your comments and questions, and we'll feature that, and we'll get Sanjeev and Hari to interact with you. So with that, Sanjeev, let's go to my second question that I'm very curious to know, which is an interesting follow-up to what you said, right? When an app or website grows at this crazy pace or an incredible pace like Meeshos, there always comes a time when the speed of pushing features and fixes begins to clash with quality and cost. And we were taught Venn diagrams in school, right? Which is speed, quality, and shipping. How do you kind of get all the three right? And I'm sure that you'd probably have two more intersections at Meesho that you're trying to balance out with your values. So How have you gone about speedo prioritizing these at Meesho and balancing these out? Would love to hear some perspective there.
No, I think there's no easy answer to this, and it has been a journey for us. And maybe I'll just try to go deeper into some of the incidents that happened in Meesho's journey that has influenced our decision making a lot. So, what happens in early stage, maybe until PMF or right after PMF, is you kind of start building a lot of things because you want to create a lot of impact. You have 10 ideas at any point in time, maybe two of them will work out. So, you want to continue to churn out very quickly because not everything is going to kind of give you a lot of impact. So iterating fast is extremely important. And tech debt is a good thing, which is if you leverage it right, this is more like just taking a loan, right? You can always have this buffer, which you can kind of go ahead and clear it when time is right. Now, this when time is right is the biggest problem. So what happened was, this is early 2019. We kept on building a lot of things, shipping out very fast. Um, it was mostly a monolith then, maybe monolith with a handful of services, 10, 20 odd microservices. Um, and what happened was, and we used to have this concept of running sale, maybe before important festival. We ran one sale, just went on really well. Like, we didn't have to do anything, nothing, like no pre warm up of LBs, no scaling up of infra, it just worked. Now, being engineers, you kind of team and I myself took pride in it. See, we're running sale without doing anything, right? Which is like the ultimate excellence. And then the next sale happened, and it failed miserably from systems POV, which is yes, morning 8 o'clock. I remember, and I get a call from someone ki app is not working, and at this point in time, all our core flows in the app used to in the backend go through a monolith, which is maybe 50-60%. And those were critical flows, even to the things like showing the homepage, feed, etc. Used to go through this monolith. And what had happened was the database had choked. Essentially, at 8 a.m., we had sent some notification and there was a spike, and database had just toppled. And last sale, it was more like just reaching the limits. But because we were so confident, we thought it will work, and it did not. And it was about in total 2.5 hours of downtime. We tried to, obviously the default thing that you do is go ahead and restart the database. Restart works, and we restarted and see there this huge flood of users coming in, and again the same thing happened. And there's a stage when we don't have a lot of sort of proxy sort of systems where you can control the inflow of traffic. You don't have a lot of gates in place, don't have API rate limiting and so on. So ultimately, I think after 2.5 to 3 hours, we were able to kind of recover. And fortunately, we were kind of ready with one of the microservices, which was able to offload, handle the feed side of things, and we quickly ran it on production because there's no time available for testing, and it worked. Now that was a big learning for us, which is tech debt is it's an interesting thing. You can always accumulate a lot of it to move faster, but you have to decide when do you pay it back. And that was a day. After that, we kind of spent 3 weeks in a code freeze or in a feature development freeze sort of mode. We kind of migrated large part of our critical flows out of monolith very quickly. But that learning stayed, which is structurally you have to keep revisiting tech debt at each and every area. There'll be certain tech debts which are more horizontal in nature in terms of tech stacks, major tech components. Others will be more localized in terms of microservices taking on certain tech debts or specific areas. So after that, what we have done is we have invested roughly between 20 to 30% of engineering bandwidth consistently throughout the year on just fixing important tech debts. And as a result of that, I think we have seen massive improvements. Obviously, you then get a lot of time to introduce uh, resiliency into your architecture, a lot of architectural changes, circuit breaking, using sharding, etc., kind of kicked in. But that was big learning. I think beyond this, we have this concept of on calls in engineering, which is, so you'll have two types of tech debts. One is your bigger ones, which will need a lot more dedicated focus because you want to maybe fundamentally change the architecture of that, calling patterns, maybe tech stack as well to some extent. Others are more localized, which is almost smaller in nature, which is maybe just by a lot of quick fixes can kind of fix that. So we have this concept of on calls who and it's mostly on a rotation basis on the engineering side across junior, senior engineers. I think level doesn't matter, but we kind of then on calls kind of not just take care of uptime of the infra, but also continue to churn out or solve some of the low hanging fruits on the tech debt side. So that is one way to kind of solve all the structurally solve tech debts. But even beyond this, you'd always want to figure out a way to ship out things very fast. And the challenge is that you have a lot of things which are experimental in nature, which is probably they're not going to give you a lot of impact, but if they do, uh, it will be massive. But doing it in the right way will take just a lot of time. So how do you balance it? So we try to handle these experimental features through hacks, which is it's okay to put a hack to experiment with the right expectation setting that maybe I'll scale this up to 5% of my audience, assess the impact, and if this works, you go back and solve it in the right manner. So I think that has helped a lot in balancing tech debt along with moving faster without accruing a lot of tech debt because you now kind of go back immediately and fix them. um, Another thing is I've seen retention helps a lot in kind of figuring out what are the bigger tech problems that need to be addressed. And in Meesho, we have seen a very good retention, which has this impact of compounding technical knowledge and we avoid repeating the same mistakes again. So that organization knowledge stays and compounds. That has been very helpful. Just last bit on this, I think in a hypergrowth phase like us, right? In a hypergrowing company like Meesho, whatever we build, whatever you build, will kind of need some sort of maintenance after 2 years, right? Most of the things, because maybe 2 to 3 years, right? So whenever we build something for scale, people kind of keep the not the current scale in mind, but 1 to 2 years down the line sort of scale in mind, so that we don't have to continue to revisit scalability problems.
Awesome. I think I enjoyed listening to that. There was just the right amount of geekiness slash tech speak that you did, and then you balanced it out with business, which was amazing to hear. And then there are a lot of compliments coming in from for you, Sanjeev. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but there's one from Ashutosh that I was able to capture. As of now, 450 plus comments already, and we're only 25 minutes into this live stream, which is crazy, crazy. So thank you
Awesome.
everyone for your support. There is a phenomenal amount of questions that are already kind of coming in, and I know Hari has been slacking me that he wants to ask a couple of follow-up questions. We'll go to Hari, but we can just take a couple of questions from the user, from people who have tuned in, just so that we give them a couple of answers. So, Sanjeev, if it's okay, let's
Yeah,
take the first one that is here. So this is from Hardik, and Hardik's asking, what kind of capacity planning do you perform? Um, with this dynamic nature of the product scaling, crucial services is a must. How about bottlenecks to be avoided in the next development cycle? So if you could just give us a little bit of color there, we'll
yeah.
go on with that. And then people, if you have questions, technical, non-technical, keep them coming from for Sanjeev. We'll just keep featuring, just like we did for Hardik. So Sanjeev, let's go for this one.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, Hardik. And for capacity planning, you need a good understanding in each and every area. How does your traffic pattern kind of lead to changes in the infrastructure, which is maybe understanding some details around, let's say, whether your kind of backend infra or maybe those backend microservices are memory heavy, compute heavy. What is the bottleneck? Is it caching? Is it mostly sort of read only traffic? Is it mostly write use cases? So basically, each and every team needs to understand how does change in traffic lead to change in kind of subsequent metrics in your infrastructure. So essentially, what is the bottleneck? And once you identify that bottleneck, then the solution is easy, which is you then do a correlation with, and then you kind of estimate certain projection in traffic. Maybe you're running sale, or maybe there's some event coming up, or maybe it's just seasonality. You estimate that, and then you proactively scale up and scale down. Now, for certain things like your EC2s or your compute systems, there's this auto scaling mechanism, right? So there, even if you are not very accurate about the projection, it just doesn't matter as long as you enable auto scaling. And I think you should always, because that is cheaper, that saves you a lot of money. Redis and your database are the harder ones where you have to be more accurate. I think what has worked for us is, see, projections are always based on your history. It's calculated on Excel. Like, you look at your traffic patterns in the last 6 months, in the last 1 year, making some assumptions, and then you project. From an engineering lens, I think it's always good to bake in some buffer on top of your projections, on top of your business projections, and then plan your systems for that. So that helps you in making sure you have enough capacity when you scale up and scale down. Just last point on this, I think as you inch closer to, for example, if you're running uh, um, for example, if you're running a Java service on a, I don't know, maybe a EC2 machine, or maybe in your Kubernetes, as your services inch closer to CPU utilization, going closer to maybe 80%, 90% or so, you'll see your API latencies fluctuating a lot. So beyond understanding your traffic pattern, how does that relate to some of the other utilization? Also, on a normal days, if you're running at 50-60% CPU, just try not to reach 80% on your important events just to handle the next skill, because things change. It's not a very linear thing. So your API latencies at 50% might be very different, or maybe slightly different, but in a overall scheme of things, it will matter. Very different from 80% CPU. So just be cognizant about that when you're doing all of this capacity planning. I hope it answers the question.
All right, Hardik, we hope that helped, and thank you for that super detailed answer, Sanjeev. With that, over to you, Hari. I know you've got a boatload of questions you'd love to ask Sanjeev as well.
Thanks, Adil, and thanks, Sanjeev, for you've given an amazing amount of data already, and I have tons of things to poke on more on some of the things you mentioned, and I love the way how outages gives a mini heart attack on the day when it happens, and year later it becomes a very amazing dinner conversation, or anytime like this is how it used to be.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. You did mention this word listen or die, which is very, very interesting, and you know that's where all your company CXOs head out to cities across India to speak directly with the users, and I'd love to know how this practice started, and what are some of your learnings with it, and how did you make this as part of the culture of Meesho?
Yeah, that's a good question, Hari. And our culture, we think about our culture as a product. It continues to evolve. It's a living organization is a living organism. So your culture also needs to evolve. And the way it worked for us is, I think when we were 50, somewhere between 50 to 100 people, culture was very implicit. You didn't need to explicitly define it, because it was a tightly knit company. Whatever gets discussed at L1 translates to the last level seamlessly without any information loss. People could see each other, see how how other people behave in meetings, and it was very quick transmission of culture. The moment we kind of scaled to maybe somewhere around 300 to 500, we started seeing things breaking in terms of culture, which is, you'd expect people to behave in certain ways in certain situations, but it would not happen. And when you go deeper, you'd get the answers that maybe that was not the expectation that people had in their mind. So that was a time when we realized we need to be very explicit about what is our culture. and it's very difficult problem. Like if you want to be seriously, you want to seriously think about what are those n things, n less than maybe 10, that define your company, it's very hard. You just cannot do it by. And we tried to brainstorm within management team, within leadership team, and we did not have a clue, so we went back to our people. So I think we did about 100 to 200 interviews of people who have stayed in Meesho for a long time and who have been successful. And that was the source of it. And one of the bigger things that came out was a lot of people who were successful were people who were very close to users. Because then they would bring in insights to not just solve their own problems, but also contribute a lot to other people's problems. In other discussions, bring in very relevant insights, which had helped us move very fast. So we realized user first is, and it is always like user first has always been important, but user first is so important that just putting it out as value and as Meesho mantra is not going to help. We need a ritual to enforce it. Once people start doing it, they'll see a lot of value, but that initial kick has to be in some sense forced. So what we did was we branded it as listen or die, which is basically you either listen to your users or you don't use. This company doesn't exist because you're building something which users don't want. So the way it works is every person who joins a company, irrespective of the role, irrespective of the function, so including engineering, right? They do user calls. Now, for supplier focused teams, for them, users are suppliers. But demand side, it's users, and for some, it is 3PLs, but so on. So they do user calls, and then they come back with certain insights which get shared in some forum. Beyond this, so this is new joiner, but everyone has to do it. So we have this continuous problem discovery ritual where people have to continue to talk to users and share learnings in a group so that everybody learns out of it. And they do obviously disjoint user calls, different sets of users, different cohorts. And that helps a lot. We also started in-person visits, and this currently is kind of I wouldn't say restricted, but mostly done by leadership team. So I think about 6 months back, I visited three suppliers in Agra, and they were very good suppliers in Meesho doing good business. And when you visit them, you learn so much. I'll give you one example. Like there's these two folks in their early 20s who were running their father's business. It was shoe manufacturing business. Agra is famous for shoe manufacturing. So they had taken it over from their father, and uh, they're now trying to sell online. And Meesho was the primary destination for them. They had tried Amazon, Flipkart as well. It did not work out. Now these guys used to run price A/B experiments, and we don't support that. There's no tech built for it. So this guy used to optimize P cross Q, which is what should be the price, so that P cross Q is maximum, and then I make the most profit out of it. So he would start with certain price, keep slashing down prices, and then slash it more, and he'll see there's no change in Q, so he'll stay at that level. Now that was a mind blowing insight. Like now it sounds very intuitive. Everybody will do it, but everybody doesn't do it because it's difficult to do it. You need to be at it for some time. You need to do some Excel stuff. So then we flow into one of our learnings. But I think doing LODs just helps you uncover a lot of insights. But yeah, I think that is how all of this started. But broadly for everyone, I think we keep looking at our culture, which is broadly our mantras, at a yearly basis. And then we try to understand what are the problems with this set of mantras, problems in terms of people not relating to it, or maybe this mantra has served its purpose. People are already behaving in this manner, and maybe there's some other problem that needs to be solved. So we subtract something, we add something, and then it goes on.
That's an amazing insight, and also it's interesting to see how users innovate on top of whatever you've built in, and they extend the product in almost all the directions. And if you listen to them, it's so much easier to just go ahead and like people want this, like and you can understand. So one follow-up question on this, and because there are so many CXOs doing this at leadership teams doing this. At a leadership level, how do you consolidate this? Like, what's the process after you? Is it the same as you have to speak in multiple leadership forums, similar to the way where you spoke about a new joinee, or is there something else which is separate for your, where you visit the folks directly versus being on call?
Yeah, it's different. So I think at a leadership level, whenever we do it, we have certain objectives in mind, which is, let's say, and for every 6 months, the kind of problems that a business is facing will be different. So there'll be certain important problem in context of that duration, or maybe in the last 6 months you would have faced certain problems. So you'd want to go deeper there. Now that is the objective with which people go on ground and kind of try to understand what is happening. You'll always get a lot more insights beyond that kind of question that you have in mind. But once we gather all the insights, we kind of come back and we group together, we share learnings with each other, and then figure out which ones are bigger problems. And you cannot apply a frequency to it, which is a frequency lens to it. It could be one person's problem and it is just big enough. So you need to apply certain judgment, and there'll be certain understanding from different business heads of the current problems already. So we kind of then list them down, stack rank them, and push it back to different teams. Hey, we discovered this. Maybe in your own problem backlog, you might want to look at this and validate the gravity of this. And that is how it kind of gets pushed into normal kind of problem solving.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense. Switching gears, I so want to talk more about the sale days and what goes behind the scenes on that. And sale day for Meesho's engineers mean they have to be constantly on top of the traffic, which is coming on the platform. What does a typical sale day look like for an engineer's office? Like, is someone monitoring your database, someone monitoring, you spoke about Redis, someone monitoring the queues, and who is managing all of this and orchestrating all of this? Could you tell us a little bit, like, how does the platform has become resilient, and who is managing what part of the system?
Yeah. No, I think sale days are super interesting. I think especially the mega sale. And last sale we saw about for 20,000 requests per second at our peak overall requests. And we did about 87 lakh orders in one day. But the run up to sale, and specifically the sale day, is full of adrenaline rush. So the way it worked is 2 weeks before the sale, we started kind of preparing for it. We have been preparing for it a longer time, but prioritizing it over everything else. Now, for 2 weeks before this mega sale, this is the topmost priority for all engineers. So we figured out a business projection, and by the way, we exceeded our aggressive projection. So that is where the buffer kind of argument comes in. Every time you have buffer, you kind of thank yourself that yeah, we should always have it. So we did a capacity planning, kind of figured out same ratios, which is, let's say your projection is of, I don't know, X million DAO versus your BAU is maybe some Y million DAO. You figure out that ratio, and that ratio kind of plays out differently across different teams. For example, your homepage will have almost similar ratios, but maybe your checkout funnel will behave differently, and maybe something else will behave differently. So you then, so the way it worked is we publish certain guidelines on the expectations. And then we ask team to go back and figure out whether you need to scale the same DB, Redis, and EC2s. And there's this complexity of reserving infra. What happens if you run out of capacity on sale day? It's going to be a nightmare. So we took certain calls on kind of, and there are two ways of dealing about it, right? You either go and I think it's called ODCR, which is you reserve the capacity with AWS. We are primarily on AWS, on a journey to become multi-cloud with GCP as well. But so we have spin up all the instances few days in advance, and then we are ready, almost ready there, right? So yeah, one more thing. I think we are fully remote, which is there's a work from anywhere sort of set up in Meesho, and has been working out well. But events like these are a challenge. So this time we kind of, from every team, we had one engineer kind of come to Bangalore and kind of be in that war room, right? It's not a room, it's a floor, probably. War floor is what I would call it. Maybe 50, 60 people, 70 people there. So, yeah, so 11 p.m. So when the sale is going to start at 12 a.m., right? So 11 p.m., things are fine, right? So you're just monitoring, you've built confidence. Ki ab to ho gaya, whatever we could do, we have done. Now it's about watching. So you get a 12 a.m. traffic, right? 5 minutes before that, we see an increase. People start wish listing, etc. So, but for us, peak is not 12 a.m. or neither 1 a.m. It's next day 3 p.m. So, which is unlike other e-commerce marketplaces who get their peak at right between 12 to 1 a.m. So yeah, I think it worked really well with maybe minor hiccups. Um, and it was 1 a.m. We thought, okay, we are now getting more number of requests than we had projected, or maybe more number of orders than we had projected. Do we stay that night and scale it up more, or you just hope that it either tapers or you get enough time to scale it up next day? It was mostly around EC2s, DBs, etc. were holding up, even Redis, but it was about EC2, and we would not want to enable auto scaling during sale. What if you run out of capacity? So that was a challenge. And you get most of the machines at night because some of the other customers might not be using it, so you can just block it. So we just took a decision, and it's a gut call. Like, you could go right, you could go wrong. So we just thought ki, okay, we won't scale it up, but we'll come tomorrow in the morning, reach here at 9:30, and we'll start seeing the traffic pattern, then take a call. At 10 a.m., we sent bulk notification and started seeing spike. 1 p.m. tak to it was amazing, like just kept growing, but it was within expectations. We did, and there's some interesting problem statements, but I'll just talk about one. Like, there's this one pricing system where we had this issue of hot sharding in Redis. Now it's a live system and it has been running for some time. How do you figure out what is the reason for that live sharding? And it's, there's no way to kind of, at least there's no easy way to figure out why is this happening. And you need to make a quick decision because this is around 12:30 p.m. in the afternoon, and you know that your peak will hit at about 2 to 3 p.m. So you need to make quick decision. Now there's this monitor command in Redis. Maybe some people will know. And when you run it, it freezes that infra for 1 second. So the way you run it is, you run monitor, but the moment you press enter, you have to press command C just to stop it, or control C just to stop it right there, so that you get that snapshot of 1 second. If you delay it, your infra chokes. And we had to do it. There's no other way. So we did it and we got the answer very quickly and then mitigated it. So there's no downtime. But so it's these extreme highs and lows if things don't work as expected. That kind of is what people remember. So people take out a lot of memories from it. But I think first day is full of action. Second day onwards, it was more kind of, I wouldn't say BAU, but it was okay. So then you start kind of celebrating. I think a lot of stories around midnight as well, on the first sale day midnight, where we kind of exceeded our traffic, exceeded our order expectations, and a lot of party mood, celebration, etc. I think at 11 p.m. we started betting on, and obviously no money involved here, no officially money involved here, but we started betting, and um, what will the order be, like what will the order count be, and you then kind of do those things if your system is working fine. If not, then obviously you spend time in fixing them. So but it's an interesting thing.
That's that's an amazing story, and especially the monitor command. It almost is like the Schrodinger's cat for Redis server. The more, if you want to look whether it's alive or not, it dies because you're checking it at that
Correct.
point.
Very tricky.
Um, uh, it's and give me some insights on how. And this is all live traffic, and you do have to also simulate this for all your load tests before, and try to see how it works and patterns. And there are certain things you can load test, and certain things you do take a call on that day, like you mentioned about gut feel. So how much of things you mentioned you have, like, okay, I have load test data, and what are the things where when you may go like, okay, this is something I believe the systems are behaving fine and we don't need the load test?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think building a stack to support perf test, which exactly simulates production, is very difficult. It's doable, but it takes time. And we haven't been able to kind of reach that stage, which means we pick and choose. So the ideal way to run perf is you do it on production at night, or you figure out a way to kind of fork the production traffic and pass it on your exactly same copy of production. We don't do either of those. What we do is, and we would want to do one of those, but it's a journey for us. But right now the way we do it is all critical services are perf tested through load which is generated by script, assuming the script accurately kind of simulates the production traffic. There'll be some gaps, but that broadly highlights some of the bottlenecks. Again, is red is the bottleneck, is something else, are there hotspots in your code, and so on. So all critical services we do it that way. Now we don't do it immediately before sale because it's too late then. Because you need some time to, if you uncover a problem, you need some time to fix it as well. So we do it slightly well in advance, and after that, whenever you make any changes in your critical flows, which is your high throughput systems, maybe call pattern self changing. Let's say you launch a feature which maybe doubles the downstream calls from that service. That's a big problem. So whenever there are these critical changes, people kind of take it through again perf test, and these are very minimal in nature. Beyond that, for non-critical, it's totally dependent on service owners, and we believed in decentralized ownership even for p0s. While we recommend, the decision is on the service owner, and that is where the compounding knowledge helps a lot, which is if you have good retention, I think most of the time you'll be able to identify whether this is going to work or not, or are there any risk areas, and hence you go and perf test specifically that.
Got it. Got it. That absolutely makes sense. And you did touch upon having, having the compounding knowledge and retention part. And I want to talk. I know, to make the engineers more efficient and productive, you have a tool called Meesho One, where you manage your one-on-ones, goal settings, and ambiguity, removing ambiguity. I'd love to know more, hear more about this tool. Like, how did this come into picture? How is it helping in, building a great engineering culture, and how is it helping with your retention overall?
Yeah, I think so. Meesho One solves one part of the engineering culture problem. So holistically, the way I look at engineering culture is, I think it's broadly driven by three tenets, which is you need a mission which is inspiring enough for people to kind of spend large percentage of their day doing that, right? So that mission has to be very inspiring. Autonomy, which is you need to define the direction, but beyond that everything has to be largely decided by people because they're also closer to the problem. They'll figure out a better solution, but they need autonomy. And third is transparency. Like, you don't hold back anything. Share good news, share bad news equally transparently, which means you maintain transparency of metrics, problems, overall problems in business, what is a plan, and so on. So broadly, Meesho One specifically solves for transparency in context of personal growth, which is it is essentially a tool to track one-on-ones and hire and grow exceptional talent is one of our core mantras. We take it very seriously, and through this we enforce one-on-ones. Like people understand the importance of one-on-ones, both sides, manager as well as the person, the reportee. I think Misho One helps you track actionables, which is the discussions that happen in one-on-ones, actionables for both parties, manager as well as the reportee. Like, and then just to facilitate discussion. Beyond this, we also have this concept of IDP, which is Every person, so manager has to create a detailed IDP, and we have a engineering growth framework, which is essentially competency framework for every role in engineering. And there, using that, managers create a IDP for each and every person, and that gets tracked as well, so that we make sure that people are getting kind of good enough options to kind of grow in their career, getting the right opportunities, able to work on the areas where they need to improve, whether it is about maybe designing architecture, or is about async, or is it about maybe trying to think of moving to management side, or anything. So I think this helps in kind of making sure people not just get enough opportunities to grow, but also we instill growth mindset through this. Just people need to become better at what they do. So growth mindset is again one of our mantras, which just says grow by 1% every day. But essentially, both sides, not just manager, but the person, not just the reportee, but the manager also has to learn from it and keep growing every day. So overall, Misho One is just a part of it, but we have a lot of kind of rituals and practices in place to make sure we keep growing our talent.
That's interesting. And when you say you have these lot of rituals, and how often do you, and you did earlier also talk about how change happening and evolving. How often does these rituals like imagine, or after how many months or quarters or years would we say, oh, we used to do that way, now we have completely changed? Like what's how fast do you think the whole rituals is changing, and what are the ones which are rock solid, which are right there?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And there, I think our HR team does a great job. So we have this concept of B hacks, which is big, hairy, audacious goals that
Mhm.
every org needs to take, including engineering, all business orgs, HR, finance, everyone. So as part of that, I think ENPS, which is employee NPS, is one of the core metric that we track. And I think right now we are somewhere at around 85th percentile of Indian startup ecosystem, is what I heard. We use X to 10X to kind of benchmark it. So as part of that, our HR team kind of took a B hack to increase ENPS from X to Y. And then when they did the problem discovery, essentially same thing. Listen or die for HR is going back to users, which is employees, trying to understand what are the problems that need to be solved. One of the problem which came up, which would have come up then, was say not getting enough chance to grow. How do I go to next? How do I grow to next level, and so on. And that is where our great HR team came up with this idea of having this IDP, which is very structured, ensuring that every org has a clear growth framework, and not just that, also looking at quality of IDPs, and you do
Mhm.
some sampling, so on, to just make sure that, and a lot of people are new managers, right? And they'll also kind of learn over time. So just making sure that we provide them with the right kind of knowledge, and we have a peak program which is essentially designed to train managers to kind of do some of these things in a better way. But I think the source of this is just taking a big 10x goal and going back to relevant users, in this case employees, to figure out what needs to be done. And a cycle is 6 months.
Got it. Makes sense. My last question to you. I know Adil might have ton of questions already in the backlog. I'll just use this last one, where I heard about this supplier growth hackathon you did in this year, and you did also talk about saying how your team is fully remote, and for the mega sale they had to get people in office, otherwise they can work from anywhere they want. So as the more engineering teams and even product managers and designers are being remote, how do you looks like hackathon is one way to bring in the team spirit and collaboration. Would love to know what are some of the things your team has done to ensure like you still have that connect, and everyone feels they're still part of the core mission, and not multiple silos.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's a big problem. that needs to be addressed proactively. So when you decide to go remote, or when we decided to go remote, there's certain lot of benefits of it, right? So your essentially talent pool, potential talent pool kind of expands massively. And second is kind of enable better work-life balance for people, because now they can kind of stay back with their family. Not a lot of people are from Bangalore, right? Like after COVID, we saw a lot of people moving back to their hometowns, so they can continue to spend time with their family. So remote has a lot of benefits. Problems that it brings in is one, team bonding, a big problem. Like, you just cannot function as an, it's a team effort. Anything that you solve is a team effort, which means team needs to feel that they are a team. There has to be a very strong bond, and that is one. Second, and I'll come to how do you solve it. Second is, I think, how do you operate? If you are operating in a remote world and you're still kind of, you need a lot of meetings to make decisions, it's not very efficient. Which means, how do you move a lot of these decision making to async, or at least large part of it up to async, so that maybe you can get together to for the final kind of discussion on whenever there's a debate and people don't agree, etc. But at least large part of it is documented somewhere and people can take decisions async. And it's a transition. You just cannot flip the switch. It takes time. So for us also, it has been a journey. The first problem we have solved through quarterly summit. And there's this concept of quarterly summit where we bring in clusters of people together. And these are people who largely work together, which is essentially could be one org, or could be multiple teams across different orgs, but they kind of collaborate together most of the time. So we bring in clusters of people together in batches of 200 to 300, and they come spend time for a week. It's all company funded, so they come spend time for a week. Um, kind of each org has given a lot of flexibility to kind of conduct a lot of team bonding events, parties as well. Some people choose to do brainstorming on certain problem statements. Others choose to kind of play certain games. Play arena seems to be a very kind of popular choice lately, it seems. And then we have a Friday celebration where this entire cluster goes together, celebrates, and then they go back. Within this, one of our orgs decided to conduct hackathon, and that is where this it was branded as Sub Go Hack, which is Supplier Go Hack, essentially hackathon focused on supplier side of things. So phenomenal participation. This year we had hired about 85 freshers. All freshers in that org participated. So it was a very good energy, and this was first hackathon after COVID. So we have been thinking of conducting hackathon remotely, but we did not do it because generally the interest was low. Whenever we used to go back to people in Czech, and they would say, I won't do it in a remote setup. So we haven't cracked that yet, but this quarterly summit helps a lot in team bonding. And we could see very clear differences. Like before quarterly summit, you'd see a lot of problems around, let's say, collaboration getting highlighted, or especially new joiners not feeling kind of part of the team, not getting enough mentorship, feeling lost to some extent. And after quarterly summit, you see all of these problems go away. So that initial connect matters a lot. That is one. I think second here is information flow needs to be more frequent, which is, so before COVID, we used to have company all hands at a monthly frequency. Now, after COVID, we kind of changed it to weekly. So that helps in kind of making sure all the communication is happening. People are aware of what is happening at a broader level. They're also feeling connected to a larger mission. They're not feeling lost. So broadly, these two things have helped us solve this team bonding problem specifically. Async is another game altogether. Yeah.
Got it. Adil, over to you.
All right, that has been such a fun interaction. I've been frantically making notes in terms of, okay, this is one, this is two, this is three. So I've really, really enjoyed this lovely conversation. I think we're just about at time. It's 7:01 already. So again, I just like to thank everyone for tuning in. There's a crazy amount of people that tuned in today. Like I said, it's been a little more than 450 plus comments that have come in. I've not checked the latest numbers. But again, to all of you who came in from everywhere around the world, thank you so much for tuning in. Couldn't be more excited. Big thanks to Hari for making time today. Sanjeev, you're an absolute star. If you go through the comments, people totally loved your content. Thank you so much for sharing
Wow.
and giving us the inside peek about not only how Meesho has transformed into this behemoth, but also you shared like what are the problems that you went through, how you solved the solutions, and what you are doing to scale the company. All very, very valuable to everyone who's trying to, replicate your growth story or trying to be someone like how you've scaled your success. So big, big thank you, Sanjeev, for making time for us.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, and thanks everyone. Great to see that everyone is finding this very helpful. Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank
So
you.
with that, this is a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming in. And our next live stream is going to be with this online marketplace focused on homestays and experiences called Airbnb. That's coming to you in November. With that, goodbye. God bless.